Hi everyone, I'm going to be reading part 2 of the preface to the New King James Version, and I am reading the Cambridge Topaz UKJV. So I read the first 2 pages and I'm up to the format. The format of the New King James Version is designed to enhance the vividness of and devotional quality of the Holy Scriptures. Subject headings assist the reader to identify topics and transitions in the Bible content. Words or phrases in italics indicate expressions in the original language which require clarification by additional English words, as also done throughout the history of the King James Bible. Poetry is structured as contemporary verse to reflect the poetic form and beauty of the passage in the original language. The covenant name of God was usually translated from the Hebrew as Lord or God, using capital letters as shown in the King James Old Testament. This tradition is maintained. In the present edition, the name is so capitalized whenever the covenant name is quoted in the New Testament from a passage in the Old Testament. The Hebrew Bible has come down to us through the scrupulous care of ancient scribes who copied the original text in successive generations. By the 6th century AD, the scribes were succeeded by a group known as the Masoretes, who continued to preserve the sacred scriptures for another 500 years in a form known as the Masoretic text. Babylonia, Palestine and Tiberias were the main centres of Masoretic activity, but by the 10th century AD, the Masoretes of Tiberias, led by the family of Ben Asher, gained the ascendancy. Through subsequent editions, the Ben Asher text became, in the 12th century, the only recognised form of the Hebrew Scriptures. Daniel Bomberg printed the first rabbinic Bible in 1516-17. That work was followed in 1524-25 by a second edition prepared by Jacob Ben Chaim and also published by Bomberg. The text of Ben Chaim was adopted in most subsequent Hebrew Bibles, including those used by the King James translators. The Ben Chaim text was also used for the first 2 editions of Rudolf Kittel's Biblia Hebraica of 1906 and 1912. In 1937, Paul Karl published a 3rd edition Biblica Hebraica. This edition was based on the oldest dated manuscript of the Ben Asher text, the Leningrad manuscript B19A, AD 1008, which Karl regarded as superior to that used by Ben Chaim, and that was 1008. It's just a little trouble reading that with my eye. Beg your pardon. For the New King James Version, the text used was the 1967 to 1977 Stuttgart edition of the Biblica Hebraica, with frequent comparisons being made with the Bomberg edition of 1524-25. The Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, and the Latin Vulgate also were consulted. In addition to referring to a variety of ancient versions of the Hebrew Scriptures, the New King James Version draws on the resources of relevant manuscripts from the Dead Sea Caves. In the few places where the Hebrew was so obscure that the 1611 King James was compelled to follow one of the versions, but where information is now available to resolve the problems, the New King James Version follows the Hebrew text. Significant variations are recorded in the New King James Translator's Notes. The New Testament text. There is more manuscript support for the New Testament than for any other body of ancient literature. Over 5,000 Greek, 8,000 Latin, and many more manuscripts in other languages attest to the integrity of the New Testament. There is only one basic New Testament used by Protestants, Roman Catholics, and Orthodox, by conservatives and liberals. Minor variations in hand copying have appeared through the centuries before mechanical printing began in about AD 1450. Some variations exist in the spelling of Greek words, in word order, and in similar details. These ordinarily do not show up in translation and do not affect the sense of the text in any way. Other manuscript differences, such as omission or inclusion of a word or a clause and 2 paragraphs in the Gospel, should not overshadow the overwhelming degree of agreement which exists among the ancient records. Bible readers may be assured that the most important differences in English New Testaments of today are due not to manuscript divergence, but to the way in which translators view the task of translation. How literally should text be rendered? How does the translator view the matter of biblical inspiration? Does the translator adopt a paraphrase when a little rendering would be quite clear and more to the point? The New King James Version follows the historic precedent of the Authorized Version in maintaining a literal approach to translation, except where the idiom of the original language cannot be translated directly into our tongue. The King James New Testament was based on the traditional text of the Greek-speaking churches, first published in 1516 and later called the Textus Receptus, or received text. Although based on the relatively few available manuscripts, these were representative of many more which existed in the time, but only became known later. In the late 19th century, B. Westcott and F. Hort taught that this text had been officially edited by the 14th century church, but a total lack of historical evidence for this event has forced a revision of the theory. It is now widely held that the Byzantine text that largely supports the Textus Receptus has as much right as the Alexandrian or any other tradition to be weighed into in determining the text of the New Testament. Since the 1880s, the most contemporary translations of the New Testament have relied upon a relatively few manuscripts discovered chiefly in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Such translations depend primarily on 2 manuscripts, Codex Britannicus and Codex Sinaiticus, because of their greater age. The Greek text obtained by using these sources as a related papyri, our most ancient manuscripts, is known as the Alexandrian text. However, some scholars have grounds for doubting the faithfulness of Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, since they often disagree with one another, and Sinaiticus exhibits excessive omission. A third viewpoint of New Testament scholarship holds that the best text is based on the consensus of the majority of existing Greek manuscripts. This text is called the majority text. Most of the manuscripts are in substantial agreement. Even though many are late and none is earlier than the 5th century, usually their readings are verified by papyri, ancient versions quoted from the early church fathers, or a combination of these. The majority text is similar to the Textus Receptus, but it corrects those readings which have little or no support in the Greek manuscript tradition. Today, scholars agree that the science of the New Testament textual criticism is in a state of flux. Very few scholars still favour the Textus Receptus as such, and then often for its historical prestige, as the text of Luther, Calvin, Tyndale and the King James Version. For about a century, most have followed a critical text, so-called because it is edited according to the specific principles of textual criticism, which depends heavily upon the Alexandrian type of text. More recently, many have abandoned this critical text, which is quite similar to the one edited by Westcott and Hort, for one that is more eclectic. Finally, a small but growing number of scholars prefer the majority text, which is close to the traditional text, except in the Revelation. In light of these facts, and also because the New King James Version is the fifth revision of a historic document, translated from specific Greek texts, the editors decided to retain the traditional text in the body of the New Testament and to indicate major critical and majority text variant readings in the translator's notes. Although these variations are duly indicated in the translator's notes of the present edition, it is most important to emphasize that fully 85% of the New Testament text is the same in the Textus Receptus, the Alexandrian text, and the majority text. New King James Translator's Notes. Significant explanatory notes, alternate translations and cross-references, as well as New Testament citations of Old Testament passages are supplied in the New King James Translator's Notes. Important textual variants in the Old Testament are identified in a standard form. The textual notes in the present edition of the New Testament make no evaluation of readings, but do clearly indicate the manuscript sources of readings. They objectively present the facts without such tendentious what is that saying? It's in two parts. Tendentious, remarks as the best manuscript omit or the most reliable manuscripts read. Such notes are valued judgments that differ according to varying viewpoints on the text. By giving a clearly defined set of variants, the New King James Version benefits readers of all textual persuasions. Where significant variations occur in the New Testament Greek manuscripts, textual notes are classified as follows. New text, that's NU text. These variations from the traditional text generally represent the Alexandrian or Egyptian type of text described previously in the New Testament text. They are found in the critical text published in the 27th edition of the Nestle Aland Greek New Testament, N, and in the United Biblical Society's 4th edition, U, hence the acronym NU text. M text, this symbol indicates points of variations in the majority text from the traditional text, as also previously discussed in the New Testament text. It should be noted that M stands for whatever reading is printed in the published New Greek Testament according to the majority text, whether supported by overwhelming strong or only divided majority textual tradition. The textual notes reflect the scholarship of the past 150 years and will assist the reader to observe the variations between the different manuscript traditions of the New Testament. Such information is generally not available in English translations of the New Testament. And there's a whole page here of special abbreviations which I could run through, and they are abbreviated, but they're Arabic, Aramaic, the 1524-25 edition of the Hebrew Old Testament published by Daniel Bomberg, compare, chapters, contrast, Dead Sea Scrolls, feminine, following verse, Greek, Hebrew, that is, Kethib, literally in Aramaic, written, the written words of the Hebrew Old Testament preserved by the Masoretes, see QR below. Latin, literally, Septuagint, an ancient translation of the Old Testament into Greek. Majority text, see preface to the New KJV, the New Testament text, masculine prints, and I'm not saying what all the abbreviations are, there's no point. You can read that for yourself eventually if you've got this Bible. Masoretic text, the traditional Hebrew Old Testament, see preface, the Old Testament text. The modern eclectic or critical text of the Greek New Testament published in the 27th edition of the Nestle Aland Greek New Testament. And a new, read that already, plural, a QR, queer, whatever that is, literally Aramaic, read, certain words read aloud, differing from the written words in the Masoretic tradition of the Old Hebrew Testament. Samaritan Pentateuch, a variant Hebrew edition of the books of Moses, used by the Sumerian community. Singular, Syriac, Targum, an Aramaic paraphrase of the Old Testament. Textus Receptus, received text, verses, versions, ancient translations of the Bible, Vulgate, ancient translation of the Bible into Latin, translated and edited by Jerome. So there's all these little things that are going to be found in down here, in these things here. They're all references, all information extra. So anyway, that's it, and done the full preface, and it's the Holy Bible, New King James Version, and that's what it is. Whichever King James you're reading, it's the Holy Bible. So, thanks for watching and listening, and God bless.